Are you ready to join me in transforming fear to freedom? That's the objective of the show. Are you ready to explore with me and my guests? Are you ready to get into the deep and play? This is where it's at, and that's what it's all about. No medical advice here. Use discernment and decide for yourself if the information is right for you. All views and opinions expressed on this show belong to the individual and are not necessarily shared with the producer of the show. Want more details? Go to letsgetrealchattingwithcatherine.com. Now let's get real and have some fun. Who are we going to explore with today? Come on with me and let's get into the deep. Let's Get Real, chatting with Catherine, and we are going deep or going home with Debbi Coleen, as we always do. And in particular, we are going to talk about Saturn. We are talking about Saturn as in 30-year cycles, and this is something I know absolutely nothing about. So I'm very grateful to Debbi Coleen for joining us and telling us how these planets, especially this Saturn 30-year cycle, influences us. So welcome to the show again, Debbi, and thanks for sharing with us.
Thanks, Catherine. Great to be here. And really excited to talk about this topic because it's very timely, and I think it's really helpful to us in looking at the next 30 years.
Yeah.
And also the last 30 years really gives us some context for what has happened and to look forward to what will happen.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of a crosshairs. This is a big crosshairs, you know. When you think about time and space, this is a really powerful place to locate where we are now, where we've been, and where we're going.
And is it helpful to look back to, like, 30 years ago was 1985. So does it help to look back on 30 years and say...
Absolutely. Because, you know, and it's not exactly 30 years. You can't count it day to day. It's roughly 30 years. It could be 35 for some people, 30 for other people, 28, 27 for others. You just have to kind of look at a vague but also defined period of our life. I'm looking back, 30 years for myself, and I could see some very definite changes that happened in my world. I remember 1988 was an incredibly powerful year. We had the harmonic convergence, which was the the opening of this really powerful period of transformation that led up to this time, 2012, moving into our new evolution here on the planet.
Right.
In cosmetology, big numbers. There's big doorways of numbers.
Right. But when you look at that 30-year cycle, are you okay? So Saturn is circling this. How does that?
The sun.
work?
Yeah.
The sun.
Yeah. It takes 30 years roughly for Saturn to make a complete orbit of the sun. 30 Earth years.
Okay.
Makes one Saturn year, roughly, very roughly. Because, of course, the orbits, it's very relative to where the Earth is in relationship to Saturn, but it's also Saturn going around the sun. So
then it goes into each sun sign, and that's why we have that influence, or we talk about the sun.
That's right. It takes about 2.5 years to go through each of the constellations that we look at between the sun and the constellations out beyond the sun into the universe. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So Saturn is basically aligned with Capricorn. Capricorn is a sign of learning who we are, really being masters at who we are out in the universe. Saturn is a sign of the father and the taskmaster and the rewarder of good, hard, solid, not just learning, but practice. Yeah. So 30-year cycle of Saturn is about all the aspects, every part of what it takes to truly learn something new.
Okay.
From the beginning experience of it to the completion, to where we really have become masters. And so this particular Saturn cycle is all about the students of the spiritual growth that's moving us into this fifth dimension energy, quantum energy. So I guess it'd be interesting if we knew when scientists started working with that whole quantum particles. Not that that has, I'd be interested, because it should probably fall in that 30-year cycle.
Right.
Not being a scientist, I don't really know. But it is in that 30 years that so many huge things have started happening. It's when computers have become our best, our part of the family.
Yes.
30 years ago is about the time when people started getting a personal computer in their home. I remember back in the early 80s is when businesses started getting personal computers, like the very, very first businesses starting with personal computers. And then by the end of that decade, people started thinking of having one in their home.
Well, even the fax machine, they were, in businesses, and then they started to come into homes around that time.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's right. I remember it was about 1985 that faxes actually started becoming real. Mm-hmm. Before that, we used to use the old telex machine. I had a telex machine in my office, ka-lunk, ka-lunk, ka-lunk. And if you made a mistake, you had to tear off the tape and run it all through again. And at that one little ka-lunk spot, that one little hole in the tape, you had to correct it.
Right.
And yeah, so that was quite a big thing.
Well, this last 30 years, I think, has been a pretty significant. I mean, when you think about back in, the early 1900s, that from 1900 to, I don't know what exactly the cycles were then, but there was a big period of growth, and then another period about up to the 60s, and then you can see where,
roughly dividing the century into 30 years gives you a sense of that Saturn cycle. Of course, every planet has a cycle. Okay, every planet from Mercury and Venus that just whip around the sun, in just a matter of months. Right. And Earth that takes one Earth year. And then you're starting with Mars and going out there. Saturn is one of the inner outer planets. All the planets on the outside of Mars, Mars is still considered to be an inner planet. But when you go, you start with Jupiter and you head out to, well, I still consider Pluto to be a planet. I'm sorry, it's a planet.
Well, I think it has to be because I learned that in school, so.
Yes, but they did change it recently.
I know.
They demoted but Pluto is so powerful. It's an immense force in our in astrology. So it is a planet in astrology. Mm. But and every planet has its own sphere of influence in our world. So, for instance, Mars has a lot to do with passion and anger and war and love. It's that interplay of the powerful, passionate emotions. And how that rules our world, how that rules our personal life. It's, because it's one of the inner planets, it's considered to have more personal effects. But boy, you put it in conjunction with another planet and that powerhouse. Well, but Saturn is about our learning, and it's about becoming masterful and experts. And that whole process that the father figure takes on in our world to guide us through those lessons that we need to make our lives meaningful and productive and useful and, deep. It's a take us deep kind of planet.
Well, I guess to me, when I'm hearing about the planets and their influence, it kind of reminds me of, even though we may not have understood when we're babies, we're born, that how gravity works, but it's kind of like that, isn't it? It's just something that actually does influence our seasons, and affects us personally, our own physiology. I guess that's what it's interesting. Is that Am I making a connection there?
Absolutely. It does affect us. Whether that energy comes from the constellations far out deep in space, sending the rays of light to us, or whether it's something in the center of our universe that responds to that energy or matches that part of the sky, I don't know, because I've heard various theories of it. It doesn't matter. There's an energy there that matches up with the constellations, that as the planets go through that backdrop of space, and from our position here on Earth, and also from a position as with the sun as the center, we do have these energies, these that are archetypes in our world, and really they're set up that way. That's the lessons that we come here to learn. And let's take it out of the world of lessons, because we're moving out of lessonhood. This 30 years has been about being students, and now we're moving into mastery. And we'll just talk about them as the energies that we consciously can interact with, the awarenesses of our position in this earthly realm, our relationship with the planet, our relationship with the sun, our relationship with each other. It's about relationships and how we have this beautiful dance of energies of all the planets, our movement around the sun, the constellations that are out there, and who we are as human beings, the dance that we took on when we came here in a body to this planet and started a relationship with each other and with the physical realm, the emotional realm, the intellectual realm, the spiritual realm, and all the maypole ribbons of energy that we intertwine as we move through the seasons, we move through the orbits. It's what we came here for.
Right, and it helps us to know that these cycles are happening so that we're an awareness of it is we can work with it and have that understanding. But right, I mean that's part of why we're talking about it. But the other thing that came to me when you just a few minutes ago is this 30-year cycle, and now we're moving into mastery. So if you've been on the planet for more than 30 years, then maybe you're thinking, well, that makes sense. But what about like the new children being born? Are they coming in that mastery already, or do people have to go through their own 30-year? Like, how does that?
That's a really good question, Catherine. And my take on it is that everybody comes here to advance in some way or another. But with these amazing children and the higher vibration that they're experiencing here on the planet, it's like we've gone from kindergarten to postgraduate. But there's always something to be learned at every level, and it's different things. So these children who are coming in are not here just to be experts and masters. Sure, they've mastered high school, but the universe is always taking it to higher and higher levels of organization, once we master certain basic principles, we can do something with it.
Yeah,
once you learn about letters and the alphabet, you learn about words, and then you learn about sentences, and then you can, at this level, write the great Canadian novel.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I was thinking, is that maybe it's no coincidence that the children that will come in now with this new cycle is beginning will have a mastery of certain things and be supported in, of course, if they're coming now, they want to expand further. And
that's really true, and it's true in a much deeper sense. Perhaps this is what you're alluding to, but just to go from there is that everything that has been here before has already been written in the Akashic records, and it's there for us to use. So we're not always starting with a blank slate. We're not always reviewing. We're not just what we bring here, but the whole past of all the things that has been experienced or happened in all the earths, in all the multi-dimensions, in all the omni-earths and omni-dimensions. is already there for us to access in any second.
Which is, of course, is where we also, some people, and, I definitely have this belief that about reincarnation, so that the kids that are, the babies that are coming in today may have mastered many, many things in many, many lifetimes. So although they come in the little tiny body and they're totally helpless going through those phases of babyhood and childhood, and they have to be reminded about gravity and, when they ride their bicycle, what's going to happen and all those things, and teaching them manners and social skills and all that. We some of them will catch on faster than others, but maybe if they had lifetimes where they weren't really good at some of those things, that they'll have to relearn, but they're still coming in with more expanded wisdom than, say, 100 years ago.
Well, they are, because more has been done in this physical realm. More has happened. So more is there in the history books. More is there in the Akashic records, the memory, everything that's ever happened has been written, and it's always in that moment available to us. Plus, there's all kinds of new things that we can do. Once we get to the point where we can make sentences and write paragraphs, then, a whole new level of everything becomes available to everyone to use. All the tools have advanced. All the beings have way more capacity to download. We're gone from those old 8088 computer capacities to, what's the highest number that we're at now? iOS 7 or something with Macs. And it's that is an exponential change. It's logarithmic. It's not numerically like 1, 2, 3. It's like, 0 to the power of 0 moving up to 100 to the power of 100. That's the kind of shift that we're looking at.
Yeah. But so as we are concluding the 30-year cycle, so one is ending, which was all about certain lessons.
Yeah. Lessons to do with opening to the truth of who we really are as divine beings. We've been pretty shut down from that for a very long time on this planet. 36,000 years ago, we had the Great Fall, and the high level of technology, the high level of capacity that we're nowhere near really remembering, comprehending, having access to even at this time. But that opening into an energy of possibility, when we have these huge, everybody has this much huger computer capacity to download wisdom from the past, or our possibilities from the present, and potentials from the future. We can't even begin to think about what we will create in that energy. This experiment of human life has become so much more capable of taking giant leaps into future progress.
So it's no coincidence that there was this huge trend of people talking about waking up in after 1985, 1990. Like before that, if people said
we were three-dimensional beings before that. We did not have much more than a sense of religion keeping us, reminding us that there's this sense of divinity that's invisible.
Yeah, when people said wake up, or it's time to wake up, or whatever, we didn't, back then, we took it as meaning the physical, wake up from your night's sleep, wake up.
That's right.
In school,
it's kind of where sciences are talking about physically moving us, with spaceships from Earth to the moon, or to Mars, or, to out into the space. Those are, that's the 3D vision of moving into the future.
Right.
But what we have here is when we put the spiritual, we have our divine self that knows that actually a lot of this is illusion, and space and time is a created concept, and that we're actually all energy, we can start to imagine energetic movements beyond the earth where, we just dissolve our solidity, because we're not actually solid anyways, as we're starting to understand, and we can move energetically to other planets, and other planets can energetically send intelligence here, which transcends all the limitations of the physical.
Which is why we're feeling or hearing more about the possibility of more extraterrestrials revealing themselves to us, because we're more
capable of understanding where they're really coming from.
Yeah.
We're more capable of understanding that, it's about the energetic rather than the physical experience, that allows people to teleport, or, that whole part where, human beings on Star Trek, their beings are their matter is dissolved into the smallest particles of matter. We've actually gone beyond that exponentially into, it isn't about matter, it's about energy. Mm-hmm. And we're going to transcend even the understanding of energy to getting into a sense of what is our divine being. Our divine being actually isn't energetic, and it's certainly not physical. These are things that we've invented. But really, we just are. What is the nature of just being?
Yeah. Well, I'm getting this, imagining that as more and more people have begun to, or at least we're talking about it more, maybe this was happening all along, but it seems like more and more people are talking about out-of-body experiences, or quantum leaping, or to
right.
visit themselves in other dimensions. So as more and more people do that, it becomes part of the collective consciousness of understanding.
Exactly.
And then if at the right time, when then enough of us are okay with that, then people from, or beings from other planets, ETs, whatever, can reveal themselves with it, knowing that we're not going to go into complete panic because we've forgotten that it's possible.
Right. And I think, we can start putting into the mix, it's not just ETs, because ETs are by definition beings that sort of have a physical presence. But what about what we have called our guardians, our angels, our guides? What about those beings, taking on being able to show themselves in some form of semi-physical way that we can, as people have, talks about ghosts and visions, and, what if those things start becoming everyday occurrences and we start walking with the angels?
Right.
What about that?
And the fact that more and more people are opening to those kinds of senses, I'll call them.
Yes.
They call it extrasensory perception. Well, that's
right.
So more and more people are, if they're not as rare. I mean, if you even just look at the common mainstream television right now, in the last number of years, there's been more and more shows on talking about these things than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have detectives that are using their psychic gifts.
That's right.
Well, that never happened before. I mean, and that, you can tell the difference when they first came out. Everybody, they made the detective little woo-woo, but now it's like that's just one. Well,
that's been the last 30-year cycle, hasn't it? Where these possibilities have been explored imaginatively. I mean, science fiction has been around since about, really, in published form, as popular genre, about the 50s, some before that, of course. But really, it's taken off and gone into TV. In the last 30 years, we've had incredible experiences. I mean, of course, we had it before that. We had Star Trek and the other
Star Wars movies.
Yeah, Lost in Space. I remember seeing that. Mm-hmm. Doctor Who.
Yes.
The possibilities of, have always been with us in other cycles, but this last 30 years has become a part of our everyday language. We've started talking about, we've started inventing some of those technologies that, and using them every day in computers and
right.
yeah.
Well, the concept of being able to talk to someone on the other side of the world without picking up a telephone. I mean,
right.
And now
right.
that is what we do. I mean, it's
and we still use the telephone. So part of this 30-year cycle is about multiplying the variables that, and being able to handle thinking. Our capacity to understand has actually evolved so much that we can handle more than coffee with black cream or sugar or both,
Yeah, exactly.
We've moved into Starbucks. This is the time of Starbucks, where we haven't let go of the old possibilities. We've just added in the new. And, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking about how I get in touch with my friends. So I have some friends that I text, and some, there's Skype, and then there's the phone, and I have my cell phone, and there's, a whole other, younger people than me have many more choices.
Yeah. And then there's the in-person, which is always interesting too.
Yes.
we still can do that.
We can still do that.
Okay, so in wrapping kind of this up in a way so we've had this 30 years. What do you see? What's this next cycle about?
It's about learning to see ourselves not as students, not as learners of technology, but of people who start using technology to create lives with awareness. And I'm talking not just about technology in the physical form, but the understanding of our being as something more than a body, something more than a mind, something more than feelings and emotion. That those would become, we starting using them as tools to advance our awareness, advance our growth, and to take us to a place where at some point we have an experience of an ascension experience. That's where we're going, to where we get to a place where we are always simultaneously physical and spiritual without any doubt, and that we can move into this quantum way of dealing with time and space as adventurers who are connected truly with our divinity. And that's where we get to being, no war. And in order to have no war, we can't be at war with ourselves anymore. We have to have that experience of our masters. I mean, many people have living in ascended masters who guide them. I certainly do. I work with Masindia, and I have a friend who is in a community where they have a living master of wisdom, who is a being who has an ascended sense, who's always in contact with her divine self. That's going to be more of the norm rather than a limited experience. People are going to become their own ascended master. It's going to begin in 30 years. Where that's a norm.
In 30 years? So this 30
there's going to be, as the people now who deal with ascended masters, who know of one or who work with one or them, who listen to Abraham, who understand that there are beings who have always a connection with their divinity, not this sporadic thing that, we go and we have lessons and we learn and we, sporadically come in contact. That we will have many beings on this planet who are continuously working with divine energy. And I say that now, and people, myself, I'm thinking, yeah, wow, what could that be?
Right.
But that's going to be the norm, and we're going to see that that's where we're going to go on, and that's going to change everything, and it's going to, and it seems like an ending point, but that's just a bare beginning
and that
of where
we
were 36,000 years ago.
Right, so that this next 30-year period will take us more into that awareness and probably influence, just like computers influenced how we did our day-to-day things before.
Yes.
This kind of understanding will influence everything from government to food supply to the way,
Absolutely.
like you say, to living in peace and without war.
Yeah, and not just without war, but a place where we start to embrace our abilities to be telepathic, because in order to be telepathic, we cannot lie.
Yes.
And the thing is, even in our minds, we're lying to ourselves all the time. We're just not aware of how we do that. So for 30 years, we're going to be dealing with those set parts of ourselves that's going to be taking us on this wild ride to becoming beings who don't lie.
Whoa.
Who don't have anything to hide.
Right.
Nothing to be ashamed of. It's not going to be the whole planet, but there's going to be enough people that it's going to start, where people are going to start popping like popcorn kernels.
Well,
the heat's on. The heat's on.
I see the trend starting already with some of even the shows this 7th season on Let's Get Real Chatting with Catherine. It's all about being our authentic selves. I just did a show with Shelley Dressel exactly about that. I just did a show with Jo Debbi on her book Frock Off, which is taking off the masks. It's like this is all taking us into this new cycle.
Yes.
So,
and that's what it means to be an expert. We start out where we left off, sort of. It's like this awareness that there's something so far beyond who we have thought that we are. We're starting out from a place where a lot of people on the planet, enough that it's like the 100th monkey has happened, to understand that we are so much more than we think we are, and have had experiences of delight and joy in ecstasy with our divine self, those moments. And those moments will start expanding and joining together, and they will become weeks where, we're in the flow and we're experiencing, we know how to find peace, and we know how to transcend ourselves. And where we go in the next 30 years is, we're going to become something quite different. We're going to be people who design our lives, living our lives around exploring awareness and being in awareness. And that's going to transcend anything that we've had in the history that as we know it on this planet, and take us out of this very limited realm of 3D experience into the 5th dimension and beyond.
Oh my God, I just love this. I love it, love it, love it. I am so grateful, Debbi, for you sharing, and I really feel like this is the high note. I would love to just leave it on this. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. And once again, and everyone who's listening, share this because it's an optimistic point of view of what's possible, and also based on what Debbi's picking up from her astrological wisdom. And I just love this. So thank you for joining me. Thank you, Debbi Coleen. And until next time, take care. Wasn't that amazing? Thank you to my guests for sharing with us today. Thank you for watching. Feel free to share the link. You can join us for live shows by going to letsgetrealchattingwithcatherine.com and listen to the replays from the show page, preview guests, and explore links to our Facebook fan page, WordPress blog, and more. We are creating an exquisite world. Until next time, take care.